Hey, this is Jensen, and today we're going to take a look at Psalm 74, and it's one of the psalms written by Asaph. Now, it's important that you understand before we get into anything who exactly Asaph was. Asaph was a temple singer. When David brought the ark to Jerusalem, he set up a whole sanctuary service when they still had the tent and not the actual physical stone temple. And Asaph was one of the people he appointed to lead out with the singers, and so he was a temple singer. Now, in the book of Psalms, he has written 12 different psalms, and those are Psalm 50, which I have a video on, and then Psalms 73 through 83. And if you notice, this psalm is right in the middle of that second group. But there's more to Asaph than appears. What we're going to see in this one, and if you've seen the video on Psalm 50, we're going to see that Asaph was more than just a singer, he was also a prophet. And so this psalm, in reality, is a prophecy. Now, not all of his psalms were prophecies, but you'll see how this works once we go through it. If you haven't heard this concept yet or don't remember from the other videos, remember the idea of parallelism. Parallelism is two ideas with the same meaning. You can think of them as synonyms, words that mean the same even though they're spelled differently. For example, think of the two words strong and mighty. In reality, these words mean exactly the same thing. Someone with a great amount of physical strength or something that is just hard to overcome. That's the idea of parallelism, except it just uses whole phrases. Now, when we look at verse 1, you can see the parallelism pretty quick. O God, why have you cast us off forever? Why does your anger smoke against the sheep of your pasture? They both have the same idea, that God is angry and that he has distanced himself from his people. And so, God is distant, or God is angry. And now, verse 2 has a similar parallelism to it. Remember your congregation, which you have purchased of old, and then the tribe of your inheritance, which you have redeemed. In the Bible, when you redeemed someone, you paid a price for them. And so these two phrases mean exactly the same thing. God, remember us. Good. So that's the introduction. God is somehow angry with his people, and Asaph is calling out, please remember us in our time of distress. So now we can go on to the next part of the psalm, and that's the part where things really get interesting. Now, I'm not going to work through all the different parallel phrases here. I'm just going to summarize each verse. If you want to go back and look and try and find those parallel phrases yourself, it would be a good exercise. So in verse 3, it talks about an enemy damaging the sanctuary. And then verse 4, the enemies are in the sanctuary. Verses 5 and 6 are very similar. It talks about weapons, and it talks about them breaking things with those weapons. And then verse 7, they have leveled the sanctuary. When it says they've defiled the dwelling place of your name to the ground, it means they basically wiped it off the map. So why is this so incredible? Well, if you follow those four different ideas here, there's a progression. The enemies are damaging the sanctuary, they go inside, they have these weapons, and they're tearing the place apart until it's completely destroyed. Now, the reason why this is particularly amazing is because this did not happen when Asaph was alive. It did not happen for hundreds of years. If you want to read about that event, you can read about it at the end of 2 Kings. And that's when King Nebuchadnezzar came in and totally destroyed the sanctuary. So if we just make a timeline here of Asaph and when this happens, you'll see that for Asaph, this was well into the future. But for us, this is in the past. I mean, the sanctuary was destroyed many years ago, and several times, in fact. A second time in the year 70, when the Roman armies came in and did basically the same thing. What's incredible here is that Asaph is seeing something what I like to call a local prophecy. The reason why I call a local prophecy is that it's not about Jesus, and it's not about the end of the world. It's an event that would happen in the future for the prophet, but to us, we can look back and say, oh, this already happened. Now, there are many, many local prophecies in the Bible. You can find a good number of them in the books of Ezekiel, Jeremiah, especially like the first 10 or 15 chapters. And even some of the minor prophets, such as Amos or Micah, have these local prophecies. Now, when you deal with local prophecies, there is something that people tend to do which honestly disturbs me, and that is to spiritualize them. What I mean by to spiritualize something is to read it looking for some hidden meaning to the prophecy. If it's talking about the sanctuary being destroyed, this must refer to some spiritual event in my own life, like the enemy has come in and he's trying to break down my walls and he's going to completely annihilate me. Now that may be a true idea, but just because it's a true idea doesn't mean that's what the author was trying to say. In this case, he's trying to give a very literal picture of something he saw coming in the future and wanted to warn people about. And so to spiritualize it really takes away some of the punch, some of the force, some of the meaning that Asaph wanted to put into this. Just keep in mind, if you are reading these prophecies, it is very likely something that happened in their present day. And that way, it keeps you from a lot of confusion, keeps you from over-spiritualizing things. God has a real care for our personal lives. He wants to tell us what is coming ahead. It's not just a bunch of stuff in the future, but he wants to help us now. And so that is why I enjoy Psalm 74.